8-year-old lawyer wows judges, let me defend him, and lays bare a billion-dollar ripoff. They called him guilty before the trial even began. His lawyer slammed shut his briefcase and walked out. The judge banged his gavel, but the real shock came next. A tiny voice cut through the gasps, I can defend him. 8 years old, no law degree, no fear. Everyone froze as she rose from the back row, eyes blazing with a secret only she held. In 3 minutes, she would shatter the prosecution's alibi, expose a billionaire's betrayal, and ignite a scandal no one saw coming. This isn't just a courtroom drama. It's the day justice met courage head-on. Prepare to witness justice turned upside down. If you believe every voice matters, smash that like button and subscribe now, because in the next 30 minutes, you'll see an 8-year-old hijack a courtroom, topple a billionaire's empire, and unleash a truth nobody expected. Comment below, who would you stand up for when the world has already declared them guilty? They say he built an empire from a broken laptop. At 26, Ethan Brixley was celebrated as the people's billionaire, his app Linkbridge lighting up lives in underfunded neighborhoods, connecting thousands of kids to mentors, scholarships, and hope. But tonight, behind the marble columns of the St. Louis courthouse, none of that mattered. 2 years ago, a single mother in East St. Louis wept tears of relief when her son Malik logged onto a tablet funded by Linkbridge. He'd come home clutching coding exercises, eyes alive with possibility. His little sister Amara watched from the doorway, dreaming of the day she could code beside him. Then came the shooting outside the corner store, an instant that stole Malik's future and left Amara with only memories and a notebook full of printed news articles about the man she believed saved her brother's life. Meanwhile, halfway across the country, Ethan was wrapping up a live stream celebration Linkbridge's annual grant announcement. He smiled into the camera, unaware that his phone's silent ping that same night would ripple all the way to this courtroom. When the headline exploded, young billionaire accused of attempted murder, his world collapsed. Traffic cams, phone records, and a stash of cash in a hidden safe painted a picture too vivid for doubt. Sponsors withdrew. News anchors sneered. His lawyer begged him to admit presence at an abandoned warehouse. He refused, swearing on his mother's grave that he was innocent. Now the gallery is jam-packed with reporters wielding cameras like weapons, their flashbulbs strobing against the dark suits of prosecutors and the hollow gaze of jurors. In the front row, Ethan sits in rented clothes, cuffed wrists resting on the oak table. His eyes are rimmed in red, not just from sleepless nights in holding. They carry the weight of every child who believed in him, every promise he can no longer keep. Behind him, few noticed the little girl at first glance. She wore a borrowed dress that hung loose at the shoulders, her hair braided with colorful beads that caught stray shafts of hallway light. In her hand was a spiral notebook, bulging with clippings. Flight logs, legal filings, a single yellow post-it flagged Trevor Maddox. Nobody knew why she was here. But Amara Johnson came not to watch a spectacle. She came to set the record straight. Outside the courthouse steps tremble under the roar of the live stream, Free Ethan trending within minutes. Commenters pour in with judgments long before evidence is heard. Yet inside time seems to slow the ticking of the clock, the soft scrape of shoes, the distant hum of traffic beyond the courthouse doors. Each sound is a heartbeat, counting down to a moment that could rewrite everything we think we know about truth and power. In this tense stillness, you'll meet two worlds on a collision course, one forged by code and capital, the other by loss and unwavering belief. You'll feel the electric spark of a courtroom charged by hope and outrage, and witness how a single voice small enough to be overlooked can fracture the walls of prejudice built by headlines and hearsay. Stay close, because very soon, this girl, with nothing but her conviction and a battered notebook, will challenge a system designed to crush giants. And when she speaks, even the most hardened jurors won't be able to ignore the tremor of truth shaking their seats. He walks to the stand in a rented suit that swallows his frame-cuffed hands trembling on the polished wood. The prosecutor rises, voice cold as steel. "You heard the evidence," she says. Mr. Brixley's phone pinged inside that abandoned warehouse. Traffic cameras caught his rental car near the scene, and thousands of dollars in untraceable cash stashed in his office safe proof he planned something darker than digital disruption. A hush swallows the gallery. You can almost taste the doubt. How do you defend against a mountain of data reporters scribble furiously, eager for the next headline? Jurors exchange furtive glances. Ethan Swallow's jaw clenched so tight it creaks. Behind him, the judge's gavel hovers, ready to fall at the slightest hesitation. But then Monroe Green, his defense attorney, leans forward and whispers two words that crack the courtroom wide open. "I resign." A collective gasp. Phones flash. Ethan's face drains of color. He stares down at his shoes as if they might give him an escape route. And in that moment, the world she thought she knew collapses into chaos. From her seat in the third row, Amara's heart hammers against her ribs. She's been here for hours, invisible until now, but nothing has prepared her for this betrayal. She grips her notebook, tight paper edges digging into her palm. Is this the end of everything? The gallery shifts restlessly. Whispers ripple like static. What now? He's doomed. Who is that little girl back there? Ethan looks up. Their eyes meet for the first time. He sees her braided hair, borrowed dress, the determined set of her shoulders. He sees that she isn't just another gawker. She's waiting, like a coiled spring. The bailiff glances to the judge, uncertain whether to remove her. The judge's brow twitches, curiosity flickering behind his stern facade. "Miss Johnson," he says, "do you have something to add?" The microphone hisses as Amara stands. Her knees shake, not from fear, but from a readiness that shocks the courtroom more than any argument. "I can defend him," she says, voice small but steel-lined. Laughter ricochets off marble walls. A reporter coughs out a chuckle into his phone's camera. The prosecutor signals for order. But the judge holds up his hand. "Proceed." In that single word, the stakes triple. Because this is no kid's whim, it's a declaration of war against every assumption in the room. Amara steps forward, clutching her spiral notebook like a shield. She presses her tongue to the roof of her mouth, then looks up, eyes blazing. "You say his phone pinged here," she begins, voice wavering for a heartbeat before finding rhythm. "But look at the timestamp, 7:02 p.m. His flight didn't land until 11:18 p.m. That warehouse is 30 miles from the airport. No highway, no express lane. Even a city stunt driver couldn't close that gap in 4 hours." A juror leans forward. The prosecutor's lips tighten. Cameras swivel. Green sweat beads on Ethan's forehead. "How do we know those timestamps are honest?" the prosecutor snaps. "Data can be manipulated." Amara flips to another page. "Watch this." She smooths a printed email from Linkbridge's public archive dated 6 months ago. The header reads, "Trevor Maddox, co-founder resignation notice." She taps the line where Maddox bids farewell, citing a divergence of vision. "Who benefits if Trevor wants his empire back?" murmurs Swell. Foreshadowing from earlier scenes clicks into place, the name buried in her notebook, the quiet mention of a former partner. The judge gestures for silence. "That's interesting, Miss Johnson. But do you have proof he was in St. Louis that night?" Amara digs deeper. She holds up a boarding pass, printout ghostly gray but legible, "Trevor Maddox, flight 562, departing LAX 6:45 p.m., arriving STL 10:32 p.m. Her voice softens, but every word lands like a hammer. He didn't just resign. He bought a one-way ticket back into Ethan's world, armed with motive and opportunity. A ripple of shock. The gallery leans in as though gravity itself has shifted. The prosecutor sputters, groping for a retort. But Amara's 1-minute warning echoes, "I only get 1 minute." She charts a final blow printed bank transfers between Hale's legal counsel and Maddox's account time-stamped 3 days before the warehouse fire. "You tell me," she says, voice steady. "Why would Victor Hale's team pay Trevor Maddox unless they planned this together?" Silence stretches like a snapped wire. Ethan's chest puffs with a breath he's held for weeks. The judge closes his eyes, counting the gravity of her words. When the gavel finally falls, it doesn't just punctuate her statements, it detonates the prosecution's narrative. Behind the stunned faces, you feel a shift in the room's air. Reporters jostle for the closest angle. Jurors exchange looks that say, "We need to hear more." Ethan's lawyer, Monroe Green, watches from the sidelines, jaw slack. Even he hadn't anticipated that level of detail. No seasoned investigator, no forensic analyst, just an 8-year-old armed with public records and an unbreakable belief. The judge calls a 2-hour recess to verify the exhibit numbers. As deputies clank Ethan's cuffs loose, the crowd erupts in a wave of disbelief and excitement. Kid lawyer spikes on social feeds. Commenters argue over validity. But one thing's certain, nobody leaves this room thinking the same way they came in. And in the center of it all, Amara stands ankles, trembling notebook, now a testament to every clip she printed, every late-night library visit, every whispered promise to her brother's memory. She watches Ethan's shoulders settle as he breathes without the weight of injustice bearing down. Conflict has reached its apex. Proofs have been thrown, motives exposed, the power dynamics reversed. But the true test lies ahead. Will this revelation topple the charges, or will the system guard its errors even when confronted by the purest form of truth? Stay with us, because court reconvenes in 2 hours, and the next chapter may rewrite justice itself. Ethan's lawyer had just dropped the case like a hot stone, and in that instant, everything changed. The courtroom's noise swelled into a roar, but amidst the chaos, Amara felt a singular focus. She had to seize this moment. She slipped out of her seat, letting her borrowed dress brush against polished marble, and pressed her notebook to her chest like armor. At home 2 nights ago, she'd stayed up past midnight under a flickering library lamp, tracing flight logs and public filings with a yellow highlighter. She'd sketched timelines in the margins, connected dots between bank transfers, and underlined names like they were battle cries. Now, clutching that notebook, she stepped into the arena. Her first strike was simple, but devastating time itself. "Your Honor," she began, voice wavering for a heartbeat before hardening into steel. The prosecution claims Mr. Brixley's phone pinged at 7:02 p.m. at the warehouse. But that data comes from a tower adjacent to a highway exit 1 he passed on a charity event livestream broadcast 20 miles away at exactly the same timestamp. She didn't need to finish. The jurors had already leaned in. Imagine the app that connects kids dead silent on their tablets, now proving a billionaire's alibi false. Without pause, she flipped 3 pages to a carefully printed map of St. Louis traffic patterns, annotated with rush-hour delays that evening. No driver, no matter how experienced, could navigate that 30-mile stretch in under 90 minutes, she said, tapping the legend. And yet the traffic records show a green light, a perfect drive. Why? Because someone manipulated the ping to frame him. Across the room, the prosecutor's face tightened. Reporters began murmuring as phones resumed recording. Amara felt a surge of confidence. She was rewriting the narrative live, and no one could take that away. Then came her second blow motive. She tore out a yellow post-it flagged Trevor and held it aloft. Trevor Maddox co-founded Linkbridge with Mr. Brixley, but resigned 6 months ago under mysterious circumstances. What happened next? Public records show he purchased a stake in Victor Hale's company days before the assault. She paused, letting that sink in. That's convenient timing for someone who wanted revenge and someone who knew how to plant false evidence. Eyes followed her every move as she produced an email chain from a corporate archive. The header read Derek Hale's lawsuit settlement funds transfer pending. Amara read the lines aloud, Voice resonant August 2nd, 7th, 45 p.m. $250,000 wired to Maddox's offshore account. 9 minutes later, Hale's team authorizes a trial run at the warehouse site. Each data point landed like a hammer, puncturing the prosecution's carefully constructed bubble. Amara didn't let the courtroom exhale. Instead, she outlined the final piece of her plan, her pièce de résistance human testimony. I contacted Malik's mentor group, the after-school coding club, and one volunteer remembers seeing Trevor in a video call with Hale's legal counsel at 8:13 p.m. that same night. She clicked to a still frame, a dusty webcam image of Maddox in a room lit by a single lamp. He's the only one who stands to gain if Brixley is convicted, and he's the only one with the skill set to falsify digital footprints. At that moment, she was no longer just a kid in the gallery. She was the architect of a courtroom coup. The judge's jaw tightened, and jurors glanced at one another in dawning realization. Reporters shifted eagerly, sensing the end of the old story and the birth of a new one. But Amara wasn't done. She knew true power lay in momentum. "Your Honor, I'm not asking for a verdict," she said quietly but firmly. "I'm asking for an immediate forensic audit of the phone tower logs cross-checked against independent traffic sensors. Because the truth isn't found in charging sheets, it's uncovered when facts are allowed to breathe free." She closed her notebook, slowly, eyes sweeping the room. Silence washed over the courtroom, thick as fog. Then the gavel fell once sharp, decisive. "We will recess for a full audit," the judge declared, "and reconvene when these exhibits have been verified." In that instant, the power dynamic shattered. Ethan's shoulders, once slumped in defeat, straightened as deputies unlocked his cuffs. Reporters lunged forward, shouting questions, but he ignored them all. His gaze was fixed on Amara, standing alone, yet unbowed. Back in the hallway, cameras flashed like lightning. Amara's heart pounded, but she felt calm like a warrior who'd weathered the first storm and survived. She knew the audit could take hours or days, but she'd shifted the battlefield. Instead of fighting a data avalanche, the state now had to defend every byte and every timestamp. As she stepped outside into the dim corridor light, she recalled her brother Malik's final words. "Stand for what's right, no matter how small." Tonight she'd done just that, and though the path ahead was uncertain, she carried with her the blueprint of justice: meticulous research, ruthless logic, and unshakable courage. The audience will stay hungry for what happens next. Will the audit confirm her revelations? Can the system admit its own flaws when confronted by an 8-year-old? The next chapter hinges on answers buried in code and clocks. Hold tight, the courtroom war has shifted, and the real reckoning is only beginning. They file back into the courtroom after the 2-hour recess. The air feels charged like the moment before a storm breaks. Amara slides into the front row, notebook in hand, knees steady now, stride confident. Across the room, technicians wheel in a rack of servers and a tangle of cables. A specialist in forensics, gray-haired and methodical, steps to the lectern. "Your Honor?" The judge begins glancing at his notes. "We've completed the tower log audit and traffic sensor comparison. Please present your findings." The specialist clears his throat and cues a projection on the wall, a timeline color-coded stretching from 6:45 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. A thin red line traces Trevor Maddox's flight path. A bold blue line tracks Ethan's supposed phone ping. "Let's start with Tower 42, the specialist says, pointing to a segment near the warehouse. At 7:02 p.m., the raw log shows a ping from Ethan's phone number. But upon deeper analysis, that ping was manually injected by a remote server located in California, originating from IP addresses tied to Trevor Maddox's known devices. He taps the screen. The red line leaps across the map. A murmur ripples through the gallery. The prosecutor's jaw clenches. The judge leans forward, fingers steepled. Next, the specialist continues. "We cross-referenced city traffic cameras along Route 44. No vehicle matching Ethan's rental car passed those checkpoints between 6:50 and 10:30 p.m. The sensor data confirms gridlock on every exit except exit 7, but that exit is 25 miles from the warehouse. No credible route exists to close the gap in under 4 hours. He flips to the next slide, a video still of a dark sedan license plate blurred idling near Tower 42 at 7:02. That sedan, he says, matches the make and model of Trevor's personal car registered at his Palm Springs address. Amara feels a thrill run through her chest. Each piece clicks into place like a perfect puzzle. The prosecutor rises, voice taut. "Objection, Your Honor. This hasn't been authenticated. We can't accept remotely injected data as proof." The judge raises his gavel. Overruled. The court will hear the rest of the testimony. On cue, Amara steps forward. This is her moment to orchestrate the final act. She holds up a laminated printout, flipping it so everyone sees the header, "Corporate Bank Transfer Logs Confidential." "My Honor," she says, voice clear, page 3, entry 462. On August 2nd, 7th, 45 p.m., exactly 1 minute after the email from Victor Hale's lawyer, there was a transfer of $250,000 to an offshore account under the name of T. Maddox. She taps the table. That money couldn't have come from Ethan. His accounts were frozen days before. Only one person had motive, means, and access, Trevor Maddox. Reporters lean in, scribbling fast. Jurors exchange looks heavy with dawning realization. A hush falls as Amara reveals her final exhibit, a court-stamped subpoena for Trevor's phone records showing a sudden data spike at 7:02 p.m. in multiple towers across Missouri. The only explanation, she says, is an orchestrated network injection, a digital frame-up engineered by someone who knew these systems inside and out. The judge and prosecutor both stare at the printout. The specialist thumbs through his notes, confirming each point with a barely perceptible nod. "Trevor Maddox," the judge intones, "you are called to testify." All eyes turn to the back entrance. A bailiff escorts Trevor in shoulders, slumped beneath a tailored suit, now looking like prison garb. He steps up to the stand, eyes darting toward the jury, toward Ethan, then finally resting on Amara. He sees the unblinking stare of a child who's unmasked him. "Mr. Maddox," the judge begins, voice calm but unyielding. "How do you explain these wire transfers and manipulated data logs Trevor's throat works?" He opens his mouth, then closes it. Seconds stretch into eternity. Finally, he sputters. "I don't know what you're talking about." Amara presses on. "You resigned under the guise of divergent vision. But internal memos show you threatened to sue for control of Link Bridge if you weren't reinstated." She holds up another document, an unsigned draft lawsuit. "You wrote it yourself 2 weeks before the warehouse fire." Under the weight of the evidence, Trevor's composure cracks. He rubs his forehead and spits out, "Yes, I was angry. Brixley froze me out. But I didn't hurt Hale. I just wanted leverage." "Leverage," Amara repeats softly. "So you created a crime scene, altered logs, and funneled money to cover your tracks." Trevor's shoulders slump. It was supposed to be a scare tactic, something to rattle him, not ruin him. The gallery explodes into murmurs. The judge raises his gavel. In light of these revelations, he announces this court finds the prosecution's case against Mr. Brixley fundamentally compromised. All charges are hereby dismissed, and Mr. Maddox will be held for contempt of court pending further investigation. That gavel drop feels like the last brick in a wall crumbling. Ethan exhales a long, trembling breath as deputies lead Trevor away in handcuffs. Reporters burst into questions. Flashbulbs ignite like fireworks. Ethan stands and moves toward Amara, but she doesn't wait for an invitation. She rises, notebook clutched to her chest, and meets him halfway. Their eyes lock, gratitude and relief mingling in a glance that speaks louder than any words. In the aftermath, cameras swarm. Amara ducks around a cluster of microphones, then turns to face them. She raises her voice so every viewer can hear. Truth isn't swayed by rumors or data spun to deceive. It's revealed when someone dares to ask why and refuses to stop until they find the answer. Backlit by the courthouse doors, she holds her ground as headlines flash, 8-year-old lawyer frees billionaire kid hacker of justice exposes corporate fraud. And in that moment, you feel the full power of her revenge, not violence or vengeance, but a meticulous unmasking of lies, an intellectual triumph that liberates an innocent man and exposes a corrupt adversary. As the crowd disperses, Ethan kneels before her, voice raw. Thank you. You saved my life. She shakes her head, a small smile tugging at her lips. I just kept my promise to Malik. He stands and dusts off his suit, looking around at the shattered illusion of guilt and the reborn promise of justice. Outside, the sky has deepened into twilight. Reporters shout questions, but the two of them walk away together, billionaire and child, united by a single truth: when courage meets evidence, no lie can stand. The execution of revenge is complete, but its reverberations will echo long after the courthouse doors close, reminding every viewer that real power lies in unearthing the truth, no matter how deeply it's buried. The gavel's final blow still echoes when the courtroom erupts. A wave of gasps and cheers crashes over Ethan as deputies unlock his cuffs. His shoulders straighten, chest rising, as if he can finally breathe without the chokehold of false accusations. Reporters shove microphones under his nose. Cameras whirl like a cyclone of lights and buttons. But Ethan doesn't answer them. Yet his gaze is locked on the little girl who just shattered a lie. Around them, jurors rise from their seats, murmuring apologies and astonishment. One middle-aged woman brushes tears from her cheek. A stern juror offers a shaky nod of respect. Even the prosecutor's usual composure falters. She lowers her eyes, lips pressed tight as if biting back regret. In the judge's chamber, his stoic face softens. He removes his glasses, rubs the bridge of his nose, then addresses the court. Mr. Brixley, you are free to go. Miss Johnson. The court thanks you for your extraordinary service to justice. Outside in the hallway's fluorescent glare, Ethan extends a hand not to reporters, but to Amara. His palm trembles slightly as he lifts her hand into his, raising it like a champion's victory. Cameras erupt anew, the clamor almost deafening. Amara's cheeks flush pink. Her braid beads catch the light as she offers him a shy smile. He leans down, voice husky. You saved me. I don't know how to thank you. Social media ignites in real time. Kid lawyer surges to the top of trending tags. View counts spike as clips of Amara's questioning flash across feeds. On every screen, news tickers rerun her logic. No driver could traverse 30 miles in under 90 minutes, $250,000 wired mere minutes before the attack. Phone ping, manually injected from Maddox's device. In coffee shops and living rooms, strangers lean forward, jaws agape, scratching notes on napkins, debating how a child outwitted seasoned attorneys. Meanwhile, Ethan steps away from the spotlight to address the judge one last time. In his crisp, measured tone, he thanks the court, his voice catching as he glances at Amara's bench. The judge nods, banging the gavel to restore civility, and then dismisses the gallery. Reporters reluctantly step back, giving room for a quieter moment. In the subdued silence, Ethan kneels before Amara. He brushes a loose bead from her braid and whispers, "Your brother would be proud." Amara's eyes well up as she presses her free hand to her lips. The applause of the gallery, once thunderous, fades into the background, replaced by a single perfect heartbeat of recognition. Outside the courthouse steps, a throng has gathered, supporters waving homemade signs, "Justice for Brixley, never underestimate a child." A local news anchor breathlessly narrates as Ethan and Amara emerge into the late afternoon sun. Reporters form a semicircle, but Ethan raises a hand in quiet authority. Today's not about me. It's about truth, and about every voice that refuses to be silenced. His words ricochet through the crowd, sparking nods. As they walk down the marble steps side by side, Amara clutches her battered notebook, now a symbol of triumph. Lost in the shuffle, she doesn't see the community organizers waiting for her arms open to usher her into an unexpected hero's welcome. Cameras follow every step, but for a moment it's just Ethan and Amara, a billionaire, and an 8-year-old bound by justice reborn. By sunset, headlines flip from billionaire guilty to billionaire freed by girl detective. Linkbridge's stock ticks upward as investors regain confidence. Yet Ethan's focus is simple. He holds Amara's gaze and promises, "I'll make sure Malik's memory lives on." Amara nods, her lips curving into a determined grin. And as the doors close behind them, the world outside hums with a single lesson: when power meets integrity, even the smallest voice can shatter the loudest lie. Truth rarely comes wrapped in simplicity. In this courtroom saga, we learned that evidence can be twisted, reputations shattered, and justice postponed sometimes until an unlikely champion steps forward. Amara Johnson reminds us that expertise isn't limited to years of schooling. It lives in curiosity, persistence, and a refusal to accept convenient lies. First, never underestimate the power of a single voice. One child's conviction forced an entire legal system to pause and re-examine its assumptions. Every one of us has the capacity to question accepted truths, and doing so, no matter how small we feel, can redirect the course of someone's life. Second, true justice demands both empathy and rigor. The jurors and judge showed empathy by listening. The forensic audit delivered rigor by following data wherever it led. Without that balance, compassion becomes sentimentality, and facts become flimsy narratives. We need both heart and mind to uncover real truth. Third, power structures favor silence until it's broken. Corporations, media, even our own biases often drown out inconvenient voices. Amara's meticulous research and moral clarity broke through the din. We must question authority when evidence contradicts reputation and champion those who speak uncomfortable truths. Finally, revenge isn't about punishment. It's about restoration of balance. Amara didn't seek to destroy Trevor. She sought to restore Ethan's life and honor her brother's memory. Real vindication heals communities, rebuilds trust, and leaves open the possibility of redemption. As you reflect on this tale, ask yourself, when faced with overwhelming consensus, will you be silent, or will you follow the smallest spark of doubt, gather your own evidence, and speak up for what's right? Because in the end, justice isn't delivered, it's forged one courageous question at a time. And that's the story of how an 8-year-old with nothing but a battered notebook and unwavering faith upended a courtroom and restored a man's life. From the shuttered warehouse to the gossip-choked gallery, truth won out when someone refused to stay silent. Remember, real power isn't measured by titles or bank balances, but by the courage to question, the grit to gather facts, and the heart to stand up for what's right. If one child can topple the facade of wealth and influence, imagine what you can do with your own voice. If this saga inspired you, hit like, subscribe for more stories of unexpected heroes, and ring the bell so you never miss a moment when justice breaks through. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder: no lie is too big to be shattered by a single question. Drop a comment below. Tell us who you'd defend if the world declared them guilty. Because in a world hungry for truth, every voice matters. And sometimes the smallest voice can echo the loudest.